Hello and welcome back to Mark My Words Football Podcast with Rob.
Let's go.
And here we are. We're here back for the Super Bowl episode, Super Bowl 59 between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles, a rematch revenge game from 2 Super Bowls ago. We got the 2 best teams in the leagues facing off for what should be a historic matchup. Can the Chiefs three-peat, first team in NFL history to win 3 Super Bowls in a row? Or can the Eagles be the ones to stop them, stop the supervillains of the NFL? Seemingly everyone rooting for the Eagles in this one. We'll see what will happen. But before we get into our analysis and predictions of this game, we'd like to take kind of a look back at what we thought of these teams to start the year and how our views have changed on them as the year has progressed. So, Scott, what about the Chiefs? Let's start with them. What were your kind of thoughts as we entered in the season and your initial season predictions, and how have your opinions on them kind of transformed as the season has gone along?
So going into the year, I predicted the Chiefs to be 12-5, winning the AFC West, and I did have them losing in the divisional round to Houston when I'd picked them off. So they did play Houston, but they did not lose. And I felt I'd held pretty strong to the fact throughout the year that I thought that the Chiefs were as primed as ever to be picked off in the playoffs. I thought the divisional round sounded like a good round, but then when you really started to look at how the bracket was shaping up, was like, that's really not going to happen because they were never going to play anyone that good. You always saw everyone kind of seemed to be the Chargers. Actually, it was Houston ended up winning that, but I definitely thought this was the year that they could lose because I thought they were not that talented, despite what their record says. I thought they were always trying to be picked off. They just played so close to the edge so often. I thought that eventually the tables were going to turn against them, but here they are. They've continued to be able to adjust and do what they've had to do, and yeah, here they are in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, for me, this really didn't take me by surprise. This is the Chiefs are one of the few things I got right this season, almost exactly right. But I had them going 12-5 in the regular season, getting the 1 seed in the AFC, and I got that divisional round correct when they faced the Texans. I had them winning that. And then here they are in the Super Bowl. I did have them winning the Super Bowl. And so I think my opinion on them really didn't shift all too much. I was just kind of impressed with them to start the year. They came out with a great performance, I thought, offensively against the Ravens in that game, very close one. And then against the Bengals, they came out with a strong win. And I thought the Bengals were going to be a really good team. So I was like, wow, you just beat like 2 of the top 4 quarterbacks in the league pretty early on in the season. Very good start, and then of course they didn't lose like at all. Only loss they had was against the Bills. So for me, there was never really any doubt. I know they played a lot of close games and they didn't look impressive, but again, that's not what I really was looking from them. Like I knew this team could be really good, and to me, it was just about getting in the playoffs and getting that home field advantage. And I knew they'd be able to shift into that next gear that they just seem to have that other teams don't. And in the playoffs, we've seen them be really good and doing things that they didn't do this season really in the regular season, especially with that last win against the Bills. I mean, scoring those 32 points and just looking unstoppable. And so when you go into the Super Bowl, I think it's really to say that the Chiefs are definitely playing the best football they have all season.
Yeah, as long as they're making up what they did last week, they certainly are. And to your point, they've definitely been different than what they were all year.
Yes. And what about the Eagles? I know we were, I know it maybe not as dramatic as our opinion on them a couple of seasons ago when these 2 teams were in the Super Bowl, but I do believe we were both a little bit down on them.
I definitely was. So preseason, I had the Eagles at 8-9, missing the playoffs. And one of the bets I did have, I made this year, I remember texting it to you back at the start of the season that I did make it. And staring at me in my open bet column all year long. It was one of those featured bets. It was for the Cowboys to win the division and the Eagles to win less than 9 games. Yeah, so I got to look at that all year. Every time I was in my bets, like, things still here. But the Eagles, they definitely changed my mind throughout the year. And I was definitely very hesitant to get on board. Like, I believe it was late as Tiers 3 when I would refuse to put them in the heavyweights, with my only reason being that I just don't feel like it, just because I don't like them. That was my pure reasoning. Like, there was no reason not to. It was just because I didn't want to.
Yep. But yeah, I didn't want to either. Yeah.
But I think that they've proven themselves to me that they're a good team, and they've made some good adjustments this year that they've really done well with the pieces they brought in this year, and they are definitely a good team. How
Yeah,
about you?
and to me, I was kind of worried about that. The end of last season was just one of the strangest things I've ever seen. Like they started
Sure.
off, I think they started off like 10-1, and then they lost like 5 of their last 6 games, and it just was like, what is this? And so when they started the season a little bit shaky, like 2-2, it took forever for me to fully like be like, okay, I think they left that kind of funk behind. But I predicted them to go 11-6 at the beginning of the season, and win their division. And I did have them playing the Packers, ironically enough, in the wildcard round, but I had the Packers winning in that game. And man, I don't know. The Eagles, it looked like they wanted to give those first couple playoff games away. Like it looked like the Packers actually came to play. And they could have taken advantage of it. And in the divisional round against the Rams, Eagles damn near gave them that game away as well. But fortunately for them, they came out with a really strong show against the Commanders in the conference championship, which I think was among their best games all season long. I mean, putting up 55 points in that type of atmosphere is insane. And the Eagles, to me, are just such a well-rounded team. And both these teams really are. Like, there really is, neither of these teams have just a glaring weakness. Like the Eagles, I guess the thing that everyone has been talking about has been Jalen Hurts, but he's been really solid. And last season in the Super Bowl, or a couple seasons ago in the Super Bowl, he was incredible. I mean, he was like the best player on that team. And when we're talking about the Chiefs, there really is no weakness that you can point to be like, oh, we're gonna target that area and exploit that, because it just doesn't exist. So I really do think that it's kind of obvious that these are the two best teams this season. And the Lions, I think you maybe are the only other team you could have made a case for, but with all those injuries on the defensive side, it just, to me, I think we really actually did get the Super Bowl that I guess we deserve, and that I think these two teams, top to bottom, are truly the two best rosters in the NFL.
I don't know. I would kind of disagree with that. Like, I think that because I think the Bills were a better offense overall, and I think that the Lions were a slightly better team overall. Maybe at the time, now the Eagles
But
might
with
be
the
better because
injuries,
of the Lions' injuries, but overall, like, yeah, like we talked about, I think last week too, that this is the one that like everyone knew, and I think I'd said it at the beginning when we predicted the playoffs. Like this is the one I didn't want. I thought this was gonna be the worst one, just in terms of like I didn't want to see this again.
yeah,
It's taken a
yeah,
while.
but
Like when those games at first, when the championship weekend finished up, I was very much I'm not watching this, but I've come around a little bit now.
yeah. Well, yeah, because it feels like we've seen this story before. There's no way, like, is anyone trusting the Eagles to actually bring down the evil empire that is the Chiefs? We wanted to just see something different, but I do think that, yeah, these probably are the two best teams. Like I said, like I don't know if you could say conclusively, and especially in the NFC, like that any one team is better than the Eagles. Like a lot, again, the Lions are what I would have said, but with all those injuries to the defense, they were just a completely different team. Like they had so many guys hurt. They were playing more backups than starters. So I think the Eagles, it kind of, now looking back, it seems like, oh, of course they made it to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and so now we get down to the business of predicting this sucker. Chiefs, Eagles, who do you got in this one, and what's your final score as well? We're going to be including our final scores as well in this one.
So this one, I'm going to have the Chiefs winning with the final score of 24-21.
All right, interesting.
So how about yourself? What do you have for this game?
All right, for me, I've been thinking about this for a while. I do think it's going to be a high score. So last 2 seasons ago, I keep saying last season, 2 seasons ago, it was 38-35 field goal game. I think it's going to be a field goal game again. 34-31, I'm taking the Chiefs.
Very interesting. All right, so we'll get to the nuts and bolts of this one. So when we're thinking about, like, what is, like you talked about, there's not a lot of big flaws for either of these teams. So where are you going to win? Where are these games going to be won and lost? So for you, what do you think is going to be the biggest decider in this game?
All right, well, last season, last season, 2 Super Bowls ago, last time these two teams met in the Super Bowl, they both played really, really good. The Eagles went toe-to-toe with the Chiefs, and Jalen Hurts was exceptional. The one thing you could point to in that game, the one thing that I think about and that most people think about is that fumble by Jalen Hurts. That you look back on the game and you're like, man, what could we have done better? And you just think about that fumble. So I think number one, obviously it's obvious, but you have to take care of the ball. Number two is going to be, to me, it's just 1, 2, 3. It's like the passing game, because the Chiefs are going to lock in on Saquon Barkley. That's just the fact of the matter. And I have this little stat sheet here of the Chiefs since Steve Spagnuolo took over as the DC. In 18 playoff games, the Chiefs defense has averaged holding the opposing running backs to 48.5 rush yards a game, less than 50 yards a game. They've never allowed in his entire tenure there as a defensive coordinator, they've never allowed a 90-yard plus rushing yard game from a running back in the playoffs, which is incredible. Now, Saquon Barkley's over-under is 109, which is insane, but I really do think the Chiefs are going to be able to hold him. And so it's going to be about Jalen Hurts again. Can you go up against this Chiefs passing defense?
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, are you going to be able to take him out of the straitjacket instead, as he had called it last week? It's going to be really big because, like you said, Hurts would have absolutely been the MVP. I think it will go on down history as one of the best Super Bowl performances of all time if the Eagles had won that game. But it's very shaded because obviously they didn't. And Hurts has been, it was very newsworthy throughout this entire year that the Eagles' passing attack was not good enough. So talked about consistently. That was my biggest gripe about them. And I think we both said the same thing earlier in the season, that we, even back at the midway point where we talked about the tiers, when you get to the playoffs, if somebody stops Saquon Barkley, I think this was the exact talking point, can you do anything else? Because we saw how reliant they were on Barkley. So that's the big question. And now we are here. This is the elite defense that we hypothetically talked about. So will that happen? And if they shut down Barkley, do you have the answer? Because throughout the majority of this year, you didn't. Last week, you had your best showing of the year, and you did. The last Super Bowl you played against these teams, you did. Will it happen again? It's kind of hard to predict that, to think that it might.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I was about to say that same thing. We said, I know we gave a lot of flack to A.J. Brown when he's reading that book on the sideline, but I think his actual point was a good point. Kind of saying okay, we need to actually have a legit passing game if we're going to go all the way. And they've gotten pretty far without really stretching their legs in the passing game. But like you said, at some point, they're going to face an elite run defense, and the Chiefs are definitely that. And the Barkley hasn't had a lot of bad games this season, but when he has had less than stellar numbers, the Eagles have struggled. And now, again, that really hasn't happened that much. Early on, it happened when they lost to Atlanta. Their two of their regular season losses. When they lost to Atlanta, he had 95 yards, which it sounds like, pretty good game, but for him, that's low this season. And then when they lost to the Buccaneers and only scored 16 points, he only had 84. So I don't know, like you said, if the Chiefs do, in fact, end up stopping Barkley, they really haven't experimented too much with putting the game on Jalen Hurts' back. And so I don't know how that's going to turn out. I really do have legitimate concerns about that. But beyond that, for the Chiefs, I'm just trusting Mahomes to do anything he can to win the game. I don't know if he's going to have 300 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. I don't know if he's going to have 200 passing yards, but 2 rushing touchdowns. I don't know if I don't know what it's going to be, but he's definitely going to be good. And people talk about this Eagles passing defense, which is the number 1 passing defense this season. Mahomes against number 1 passing defenses in the playoffs is 3-0. His team scores 37 points a game. He averages 280 yards a game and a 108 passer rating with 8 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in his 3 games against number 1 passing defense in the playoffs. So to think incredible that this defense can stop him is an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah, and I think when you look at this Fangio defense, they play the very bend but don't break, death by a million paper cuts. They make you play death by a million paper cuts. And here's the thing that's bad about that is Mahomes and Reed are probably one of the best duos to ever play death by a million paper cuts. So Mahomes is very good at targeting those short intermediate passes. And Reed is very famous for drawing up his screens and all of his fancy window dressings to be able to make that accomplished. Maybe they're only second to Brady and Belichick being able to do that, but they are very, very good at that. So I don't really have many issues like with them not being able to beat that. Like you said, like I feel like the Chiefs can do what they need to, like whatever the game plan is. It seems like the Chiefs should be able to counter. The one thing would maybe be if the Eagles can get up ahead. And this is what happened in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. They were up 10 at halftime. And the stats for those teams are 2-26 when they were trailing at halftime. Of course, one of the two now being Kansas City from that year. But if they are able to do that, now they've got Barkley. Now they've got that run game to be able to stop that. And they've got that big turnover defense. But I think you've got to be up to make that happen. That's where I'm kind of off on Philly for this week, is because they've been so reliant on turnovers and so reliant on Barkley breaking off the big runs that, like, I don't know what you could expect from that offense, which is crazy on an offense that does have Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, which is probably the best wide receiver duo, one of them in the league right now, that you're questioning if they can get it done.
Yeah, 100% agree with everything you just said there. And to kind of put a stamp on that, like Mahomes has never lost against a Vic Fangio defense before in his entire career. He is 8-0 against Vic Fangio's defenses.
Yeah. Sure.
It's crazy. And I don't want to just make it seem like, oh, the Super Bowl's chalk, because certainly these are, the two best teams. Anything can happen. And, you never know how and just one play could turn the game on its head. But everything that I'm getting, all the signals I'm getting, just this matchup is really a bad matchup, I think, for the Eagles. I think that the Chiefs, this is one of the better matchups they could have gotten. And because the Eagles really don't have that dynamic QB to go and slice and dice the Chiefs. And I know, like, yeah, Hurts did it a couple Super Bowls ago, but I just don't really have that confidence in him to do that again.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the Eagles' best chance at this game, they need to be disruptive on that defensive line. Like 100%. That's what Houston did when they really limited Kansas City's offense. So that would be huge for Philadelphia if they can get those really great defensive tackles, if they can get them in the backfield, if they can get them in Mahomes' face and throw things off schedule. That's going to be their best chance at getting some stops and getting a handle on this game.
Yeah, I think that's probably the Eagles' best matchup too, is like their defensive line against the Chiefs' offensive line. Because Chiefs' offensive line has gotten better, a lot better, but it's had some weak moments too. Like, it's not, in my opinion, it's not one of the better offensive lines in the league. And the Chiefs' defense, or in the Eagles' defensive line, is exceptional, especially with Jalen Carter really just budding as a rising star. And so, yeah, that is definitely, if they can like disrupt that, bat down passes, things like that, and get Mahomes out of the pocket, I think that's definitely their biggest key to the game, to stopping the Chiefs' offense.
Well, yeah, when you talk about the margins, like I would say I think it's going to be a close game as well. But when I'm just reading through the scenarios here, it just seems to me like the Chiefs have just been so good in those spots, and this just seems like they've got those slight advantages that I think that the game's going to turn out in their favor.
Yeah, there's almost a sense of like inevitability. It's almost like we fought against it all. Well, not me, but everyone else has fought against it all season. Like, no, the Chiefs, they can't go to the Super Bowl. There's no way they're going to get stopped. But now that we're here, it's kind of like everyone that I've seen, I haven't seen really anyone take the Eagles in this game. Everyone's kind of acknowledging like, yeah, and it just kind of feels inevitable at this point. They've come all this way. Have they really won 15 games and, fought through all of this to get to the chance at a three-peat only to lose it in the final game? I don't think so. And my question to you would be, I know we were talking about this earlier, if the Chiefs win this, do you think this makes them the greatest dynasty in NFL history?
I think it probably does. Yeah. The 7 straight AFC Championship appearances, hosting 6 of them. Yeah, 3 straight Super Bowls. Yeah, the 4 and 5 years, like, that's pretty unprecedented. As we talk about, like, the New England dynasty was very, very good, but it was not as condensed as this was. Like, this was just done in such a short period of time. There's not that, like, New England's not quite as dominant. Like, literally nobody has gotten through other than the Chiefs in these past several years. Because, like, you think about all the elite quarterbacks in the AFC, like, how good they are. Like, that's also a testament to how good the Chiefs team has been. That they've been a roadblock to Allen, Lamar, and Burrow. I mean, Burrow obviously being the only one to get through that one time, but he's just been sitting right in his way the whole time. And yeah, this would absolutely cement them as the dynasty.
Yeah, definitely. And Mahomes too. Like, this is insane. This could be the best start to any sports career, like, ever. He literally has not struggled. His first season, he threw for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. They'd lost in the AFC Championship game. And then his second year, he goes and wins the Super Bowl. And then the season after that, they lose in the Super Bowl. Season after that, they lose in the conference championship. And then they win the Super Bowl. They win the Super Bowl. And here they are. Like, his rock bottom is losing to Tom Brady, like the greatest of all time. Like, that's his worst season in his first year. Or you could say losing to Joe Burrow in the conference championship game. Like, nobody else has been able to beat him. Like, to see that. And that's, I think, what contributes to people like having a dislike of him. Is like, typically we like to see some struggle. Like, we like to see some underdog story. We like a Kurt Warner type of thing, American underdog. But Mahomes, it was just like day one, he was just off and running. And he really hasn't slowed down from a team success standpoint, even though his stats have gone, they've kind of regressed a little bit these last couple of years. It's pretty amazing to see that, like, he's never done any worse than losing in the conference championship.
Yeah. I think for me, like, I stayed on him a lot longer than some people did. I was very happy for the Chiefs the first time they won the Super Bowl, especially for Reed. I thought he really deserved it because he took in a lot of flack from coaches. Because I'm a big proponent of the phrase, like, that you're just never going to do it until he actually does it. Like, that was Reed. For so many years, everyone always said he's never going to do it. He's never going to do it. He's never going to do it. And look where he is now.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think that's what happens when you find an elite quarterback. It's hard to win. It's hard to have sustained success that's why I think quarterbacks and coaches just really go hand in hand. And we view both of those guys. Those are really the only positions and parts of the team that we view by, like, Super Bowl wins and what you do in the playoffs. Like, we don't care about that when we talk about receivers or running backs, but when we're talking about quarterbacks' legacies and, ranking the top 10 and same with the coaches, that's what we think about. And it's really hard if you don't have a coach that's on your level of greatness if you're a quarterback. And it's tough if you don't have a quarterback that's on your level of greatness if you're a coach. And with Reed, he didn't get that elite QB. Had some good ones, didn't get the elite one until Mahomes. And it's always frustrating. Like, when we're looking at, like, Rodgers, my whole, childhood growing up watching them lose every single year in the playoffs. And you could definitely say Rodgers played bad in those playoff games. But to me, it always felt like, I like Mike McCarthy. I think he's a good coach. Felt like he was never the coach that could live up to the level of his quarterback. And that's what made it super painful. But to see the Chiefs and having Reed, who is just an offensive genius, and Mahomes, who is an athletic genius, pairing them up is just absolutely deadly.
Yeah.
And Reed, like, this is something else I was thinking about. Like, you look at Belichick, like, we're talking about Reed and Mahomes are now chasing Brady and Belichick for, like, the top of their respective positions. But I think that Reed's one of his strongest cases is, like, he actually was really good. I know he didn't win the Super Bowl, but he was really good without Mahomes. He, like, made the Super Bowl, but Belichick has done nothing without Brady.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Belichick had a little bit less of a time without Brady, but he definitely there was a lot more struggle without him. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like, about Reed, like, he had some very good teams when he was in Philadelphia. He really did. That was one of the ones, like almost to where McDermott's getting now Buffalo, like, where you've gotten close so many times, and eventually they're just like, well, we gotta do something. So coach is the easiest thing to do. Like, that's the easiest change you can make. So that's what they ended up doing.
Yeah, and that's why coaching in the NFL is just a super hard job to deal with. Because, like, oh, you've done great. Look at my resume. Yeah, we just, like, time for a change. Like, what other job is that a thing? It's like, I performed well, I've exceeded expectations, but, like, yeah, we just need a change. But that's the tough reality of being an NFL head coach. And yeah, like you said, it's way easier to do that than just, like, reconstruct your entire roster. But sometimes it's what you need to do.
Yeah, it's just like, there's just call for change that you have to do something. You can't walk in with the exact same plan again. So, like, well, let's try and change the philosophy then. So unfortunately for the coach, that's just how it goes.
Yeah, and, like, with the Eagles, like, when they fired Reed, like, you could argue that they made the kind of the right decision. It took a while, but they ended up getting a Super Bowl out of it. And now, it's kind of like if they lose this one to him, losing 2 to him, then you're like, man, we should have kept him. But yeah, so that's another little wrinkle in this game. It's like Andy Reid going up against his former, franchise. But the Eagles go through coaches like, man, like Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl, and like 2 years later, he's gone. That's another interesting thing about this. Like when we're talking about Nick Sirianni, like if you lose 2 Super Bowls now with this Eagles franchise that's not afraid to fire you, I think he's probably going to be entering next season on the hot seat if he loses this game, despite being having a great record.
Yeah, because I don't think he's a very good game manager. You can look at him like he's a very interesting coach.
Yes,
and
very.
I would not put him in the elite category though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but since he's entered the league, though, he's had the second most wins, tied with Sean McDermott, and only behind Reid.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, which, by the way, crazy. Like tied with Sean McDermott, he's made 2 Super Bowls, and the Bills haven't made a Super Bowl. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, this is a testament to what Kansas City has done. They've just been in everybody's way.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so as we wrap this up, we're going to go through our prop bets for the Super Bowl. Obviously, Super Bowl Sunday. It's really the best day for sports betting around the world. We're going to have a little fun with some prop bets. So we're going to fire them off at a rapid style pace, one after the other. So Scott, why don't you get it started off with your first prop bet?
All right. I'll get things started with one that I absolutely love. I think there's a ton of value here, and that is a DeAndre Hopkins over 1.5 receptions. In 10 of the 12 games since Hopkins was traded, he had at least 2 catches. The only 2 where he didn't get 2 catches were the last 2 games. And that's what's bringing this number down and giving it such a great value. So personally, I'm going to be focusing on what has been happening all year, just what's been the constant, not what has just happened. So I'm absolutely loving DeAndre Hopkins over 1.5 receptions.
And what is the odds on that 1.5? That's crazy.
It is just at a plus number, I believe.
Wow, that's wild. 1.5. Love that one. For me, I'm going to do Saquon Barkley under 109.5 for rushing yards. Like I said, I love that little stat there with the Chiefs defense absolutely shutting down all running backs that they have faced. Now, James Cook played pretty darn good last week, but he hasn't broken that 90-yard rushing mark, which is so important. So I'm not sure Barkley will break that. I know he's been really good, but I think the Chiefs are really going to play a one-dimensional style defense, force the Eagles to pass. I will take the under on Barkley's rushing yards, which is 109.5.
And then for me, my second one, which I also very much like, is Xavier Worthy over 5.5 rushing yards. So since December 1st, Worthy has had a rushing attempt in every game and 5 or more yards in every game except 1. So this one where I think absolutely that Reid is going to scheme up a run for Worthy and hitting it to only get 6 yards, I think that is absolutely something that could happen. So I also very much like Xavier Worthy over 5.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, that is a really nice one as well. I will go with Kelsey over on the receiving yards, 60.5 receiving yards. Kelsey has only had 1 game in which he has not had at least 60 receiving yards in the playoffs, albeit that was last week. I do think that he will put on a show for this one. I mean, he has to. This could be the last game he ever plays as an NFL player. And I know that seems kind of crazy to say because he's still a pretty good tight end, had 800 yards this season, which was his lowest. But something about repeating, winning 3 in a row, for that to be the final thing of your career, I think that would be too hard to resist to kind of just walk off like that. So Kelsey's going to be putting it all on the table, over 60.5 receiving yards for sure.
Yeah, good stuff. And then also me, I'm going to be taking Jalen Hurts over passing yards with 211. I think what we talked about, the Chiefs are going to be selling all out to stop Barkley. And with everything on the table, I think they're going to take the chains off Hurts, and he is going to be passing it around the field quite a bit. And I think he will want some revenge for the MVP he could have won in 2022. Even if the Eagles do lose, 211 is not a big number at all. He's not hit that very often this year, but it is really not a big number, especially for the game plan that Kansas City could be cooking up on defense. So I like Jalen Hurts over 211 passing yards. All
right, and for me, I am going to go with a successful 2 2-point conversion in this game could be by either team. And this is some really good odds here, plus 180 on this one. If one successful 2-point conversion is made, specifically, we're looking at the Eagles here. I mean, let's be honest, right? The tush push. And it's going to be really interesting to see if the Chiefs can stop that. Really, no team has been able to successfully and consistently stop it. Because the Eagles, obviously, I think it's a whole other animal. I mean, they were able to kind of stop the Bills' version of it, but the Chiefs are a whole other animal in this one. I think the Eagles are a whole other animal. And I think they're going to be ultra aggressive. They're not going to want to waste any points. So, yeah, Eagles specifically, but really any team successful 2-point conversion attempt.
Yeah, I do like that. I think there's definitely going to be a 2-point conversion attempt in this one. And maybe some crazy bets. Not always fine. So for my kind of off-the-wall bet here, I'm going to be taking Noah Gray for 2+ touchdowns.
Love it.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of a random one, but he's just been my guy. Whenever I'm betting on Chiefs players to score touchdowns, it always seems to be him. And just so you guys know, 2 games this year, he's had 2+ touchdowns. Maybe it could be a third.
Yeah. What are the odds on that? It's got to be something wild.
They're very high. It was plus 6,000, I believe, is what it is.
Oh my gosh, I love it though. Yeah, like you said, that he's had that already twice this season. That is a good evidence there that's going to happen again. And it's going to be someone random. Like there's always somebody just random. Like when Kadarius Toney had a touchdown, and now like he's not even on the team anymore. Like I just feel like there's always some random player the Chiefs just end up getting involved. Could definitely very well be Noah Gray. For me, though, I'm going to go with the Eagles side of things. I'm going to have Jalen Hurts marking an octopus for this one. And octopus, for those who do not know, is when you score a touchdown and a 2-point conversion in the same drive. I think this could be very possible. Jalen Hurts, obviously, quarterback, so 50-50 shot, they throw it or run it. If they're throwing it, he's going to be the one doing the throwing. But even if they run it, he can use his legs a lot. As we've seen in the conference championship, he had 3 rushing touchdowns. And then when we're in a 2-point conversion scenario, there's really only one play they're going to be running, which is going to be the tush push with Jalen Hurts. So octopus you can get at a plus 2,000 number for Jalen Hurts. I really like that as my kind of off-the-wall bet.
Yeah, so do I. I think there's definitely some good value, some fun bets in there. Hopefully you all will take advantage of those this weekend.
Yes, definitely. All right, that concludes this edition of the show. And we are going to be really looking forward to this Super Bowl. Again, it is the rematch of the Chiefs and the Eagles, the Super Bowl that we didn't initially want. But the more I think about it, the more I am intrigued for this one. This is a running back season that we have not seen in a long time. Barkley has a chance to do something really special if he can win the Super Bowl and get also the Super Bowl MVP. And of course, the Chiefs side of things, the chance to become the greatest dynasty in NFL history. It's going to be a really cool matchup to watch. Going to sit back and enjoy this one. And that has been all from Mark My Words Football Podcast with Rob
and Scott.
And wishing you a happy Super Bowl party. We are tuning out.